and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Tuesday, October the 13th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, British Columbia. I'd like to start by thanking our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. First part of Citizens Forum is always the Walton Jack Show, a shortened version today. So I'm just going to start off reading Stephen Harper's deficit numbers. And my question is this: why the media and the other parties allow Mr. Harper to constantly mouth off about deficits and criticize everyone else while his own record is a deficit disaster. And I'm not necessarily against deficits, but what I don't understand is why nobody will call Mr. Harper on this, because that's what his base, right? They're the ones who believe that deficits are bad and Mr. Harper doesn't do them. His base is vulnerable. They can be moved if people knew the truth, but the media and the other parties won't tell the truth. So here are the numbers, and I think I read them once before. So 2008, $6 billion deficit. 2009, a $55.6 billion deficit, the largest deficit in Canadian history. So Stephen Harper ran the largest deficit in Canadian history, but it doesn't matter because he's allowed to say whatever he wants and nobody will ever tell Canadians the truth, which is the real problem in this election, that on so many issues, nobody, not the NDP, which is my party, not the Liberals, not the Conservatives, and not the media will tell the truth. So 2010, a $33 billion deficit. 2011, a $26 billion deficit. 2012, an $18 billion deficit. And 2013, that's fiscal 2013-14, a $5 billion deficit. So those are the facts, and it's just kind of amazing that an election goes by and the media gives us every detail about kneecaps, right? That's what they want us talking about, and that's what we are talking about. But the important issues, the truth, the life and death issues in many, many instances, we're not talking about, because that's the role of the media and that's the role of the other political parties, and it's a disaster for us.
I just want to point out that, you know, if he was actually funding really progressive things in Canada and, you know, building up a renewable energy or making major infrastructure investments or whatever, you'd understand deficits. But all he was doing was bailing out his buddies, bailing out the banks. You know, all he was doing was shoring up a bad idea with our money, by the way, because we're going to end up paying that sooner or later. While he was cutting corporate taxes, while he was letting them run roughshod over environmental regulations, while we were all losing services and basically the country's going down the hill, down, he's running deficits because he still has to pay off his buddies.
It's amazing, and which brings up the whole issue of the Bank of Canada, which is another important issue that's not being used. The Bank of Canada can give us interest-free money to pay for our schools, pay for the public transit we need, fix up health care, do so many things, and nobody will even talk about it. That's how dead that issue is. Yeah. But kneecaps, once again, kneecaps is what the media and the corporations that own the media, that's what they want us talking about, and once again they've succeeded, which you really have to wonder, what kind of an election is this?
Exactly. So, good point, Jack. I just wanted to point out, you know, we're watching this election unfold, and it's hard to know exactly what is really happening. You look at polls, you really don't know what to think of them. But, you know, I've always said the 2013 election in British Columbia was stolen from us by the collaboration between the NDP and the Liberals. And I've written articles on that, and you can go online and go to powerofthepeople.ca and read all about it. But here's a couple of a few similarities that I'm seeing between the 2013 election in BC and the federal election. The first thing to note was the big NDP lead that dissolved into thin air.
It's true.
Almost overnight. They tried to say Mulcair didn't do well in a debate, but he just fell 6 points. Boom. That's like 15% over just almost overnight. And the Conservatives went into the lead. So like I said before, all the polling early on was faked, that held the NDP up high, and now they're starting to do more honest polling that shows that they never were in the lead in the first place. So we have the NDP acting similar ways. Dick's campaign, everybody knows how it's a disaster because he really didn't level any of the really hard criticisms against the Liberals that could have taken them down. A close examination of the BC rail scandal was all he had to do to destroy the Liberals. He refused to talk about that. He was running a clean campaign. Mulcair's running a clean campaign. So he's not going to talk about, for instance, I mean, there's lots to talk about, but the story that we've been covering is that the ISIS connection with Stephen Harper, a direct connection that his own man he put into Jordan as the ambassador to Jordan. His man, a Secret Service guy, is running people into Syria. That one story, which is legitimate, is in the mainstream media, would destroy a government. But, you know, the NDP can't bring it up. And, you know, there's all sorts of other things around election fraud and all that. But I think we do have to get down to the story of Murray Rankin here in Victoria and really look at that, how terrible that is for the Canadian public. What he did to destroy Canadian environmental law in one foul swoop and helping an American corporation to attack Canada through the NAFTA agreement. It's really and truly a devastating blow to Canada. And for nobody wants to talk about that. All of a sudden, it's not an issue to be talked about. And these are the sort of things that not only will the NDP, I feel, really betrays us by not criticizing the Conservatives, and also they're doing some pretty nasty business themselves, much like the NDP here in the province of British Columbia.
Yeah. It's true. The Murray Rankin story that you mentioned is in Focus magazine this month. It's worth reading, and it certainly came as a surprise to me what that story says. I think it comes as a surprise to a lot of people. It's very interesting that none of the corporate media in this city or in the province or the country seems willing to report it. So it remains, you know, but the woman who, I believe a Liberal candidate a few weeks ago, who made comments that at one point in time she didn't believe the official story about 9/11, she was immediately pushed out. But here's a story where, you know, a lawyer wrote a report that really damaging to Canada under NAFTA, and allowed a successful suit to be, helped to allow a successful suit to be carried out against us. That story the media keep covered. The problems that this country faces are so deep that we've got to deal with them, or they're going to destroy this country completely. And by they, I mean the corporations who run the show.
Well, you know, you can go on and on. I mean, if you really look at even the unwillingness of the NDP to talk in depth about the election fraud, you know, and there are really hard facts that really the public deserves to be reminded about. You know, in foreign policy, this is another area that the NDP and the Conservatives are very closely aligned. By the way, they're very closely aligned with this obsession with balancing budgets, which is, you know, the austerity ideology that's so devastating for all countries. You know, if you look at the bombing of Libya, the extension of the bombing in Libya, the NDP lined right up with the Conservatives, and they knew they were bombing hospitals, and they knew they were bombing mosques, and they were bombing that country back into the Stone Ages, and Canada participated, and the NDP were right behind that. And, you know, of course, always the ongoing story with Canada's blind allegiance to one of the most repressive regimes on the planet is the government of Israel, the apartheid government in Israel. By all measurements, if you talk to the United Nations or talk to people that really know about this, they condemn Israel regularly. The NDP is lining right up with the Conservatives on that.
And not that the Liberals are any better anywhere either.
Well, you know, but, you know, if you look at these foreign policy and then the foreign policy on ISIS, they seem to buy that complete fabrication that has no substance to support it. I mean, the NDP and the Conservatives are in cahoots. And this is what I've been saying. It goes all the way back to Jack Layton. There's lots of analysis on it, and I'm going to be working more on this story. It's devastating for the NDPers. My NDP friends just completely trashed me, Jack. They just do not want to talk about it because they have this blind allegiance to this ideology that basically is mythical. What they believe in doesn't exist.
I mean, what they believe about the NDP doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
I agree with you.
And they're stuck in that way, and they're being exploited by these powerful organizations that exploit that blind allegiance. And we're stuck in a bad place because of it.
So that's the federal scene, which isn't good. I just want to mention a deal that just Victoria City Council just last week voted to allow a development by BOSA Development Company in the North Park area, a big development on the corner of basically Vancouver and Pandora. And again, to me, it's a Vancouver developer comes into town and our city council goes along with what they want, really to the detriment of a neighborhood. And if they can do that to one neighborhood, none of us are safe. I just want to mention who voted for the BOSA development. It was Mayor Lisa Helps, Jeff Young, Chris Coleman, Charlene Thornton-Joe, Marianne Alto, and Councillor Lucas. Maybe it just doesn't seem right. And maybe I'm sure they had reasons for doing what they're doing, but to allow a developer to come in and just trash another neighborhood.
Yeah.
If that's what the people of the city want, okay, let's do it. But the people of the city were nowhere involved in this. We were kept out.
But Jack, that's public space more or less. That school grounds and all that. It's now privatized. Yeah. It's all corporatized. That's land that people cannot be on anymore. There's another development in behind the legislature the same way. Instead of developing open spaces, places where the public can come and to gather and to become a community, they're taking those spaces and they're putting walls around it and privatizing it. And that's a terrible thing to do.
Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
So who's going to win the election? We don't know, but half of these programs are going to show when the election's over. We'll see. Thanks very much for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.